What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Point Forward. Myself, Andre Iguodala, my main man, Evan Turner.
Yo, what's up?
Got a very special guest. I know I say that a lot, but thus far, ET, I feel like all our guests have been special to us. And
Thankfully.
I feel like that makes for a better vibe, better conversation. Yeah. But this is a guest. I have this fear, probably the only fear I have. I don't even know if you call it a fear, but, uneasiness to rejection. And this guy, it hurt my heart. I had to kind of reject him 2 times, but he's stayed true to our friendship. We've connected on many different levels, just way beyond the game of basketball. He's made his mark, put his imprint on the earth, put his stamp on the earth for what he's done with technology and doing the same thing in the basketball world as the owner of the Sacramento Kings. Welcome, Vivek Ranadivé. I hope I said it right, but appreciate you.
Yeah, Andre, there's like 3 people that got it right on the first try, and now there's 4. So.
Oh, amazing!
No surprise, you're always crushing it. So, but I also wanted to say that I've been chasing this guy like I feel like my whole life, And when we first got the team, job 1 was get Andre Iguodala on the team. And he just kept rejecting me over and over and over again. And I just keep showing up and showing up. So,
hey, persistency is key. You never know. I know one thing, like I said earlier in the past, I remember there was a couple times I thought Andre was going to be a Sacramento King. And every time he came back from free agency, he always raved about you. And even to this day, when we were doing a podcast, he just kept saying, we got to get Vivek. We got to get my man Vivek. So thank you once again.
When I met him, I told him, I said, I used to be friends with Steve. And Steve used to say, let's put a dent in the universe. And, Steve was a dear friend, Steve Jobs. And so I told Andre, I said, let's put a dent in the universe. And
oh, wow.
He sent me a picture of Thor with a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
But then he took the sledgehammer down to the big corporation, the Warriors. The little startup,
So that means you have an eye for talent, because you definitely knew who could change the universe, and he definitely did. So, glad we're here, and I'm glad I'm partnering up with him.
Yeah, you picked a great partner. So congratulations, and Andre, you picked a great partner too, as you did on the Warriors. So.
Appreciate it. Well, we got a lot of time on Earth to move to Earth, so we still looking forward to doing that. But I think a lot of folks don't really have a good knowledge of your background and what you came from. And, it's always that story of, we've been talking to different guests in this, how did you become who you are? Or, some people may have had, a stepping stool or some assistance to get to where they're at. But let's just start off on your backstory and, kind of your background growing up, where you grew up at, and, your education background and what made you who you are in your younger years.
Yeah, so Andre, when you get to be an old guy, you kind of look at your life and say, was there a defining moment in your life? And so for me, it happened when I was a little boy in Bombay. And I had my ear plastered to a little transistor radio. And I heard these magical words, 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. And I was listening to the Voice of America broadcast the moon landing live all the way to Bombay, India. And I was just completely blown away. I was like, wow, who are these people that were able to take a man, put him in a box, and send him to a rock 250,000 miles away to land there flawlessly, first time. How brilliant is that? How brave, what an imagination. And I said, I want to be one of them. And by the way, the entire NASA space program had less computing power than all of us carry in our pocket.
Right.
And that's what's crazy about this story. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take my studies seriously, and somehow I'm going to get to America. So when I was like 16, 17, I applied to MIT for admission, and they made a mistake in the admissions process and admitted me. But back then, the rupee was not a convertible currency, and by Indian standards, it meant a lot of money. So they gave me, I literally had to go to the head of the Reserve Bank of India, which is like the Federal Reserve of India, and convince them to give me some dollars. And they gave me enough for like 1 quarter and $50 in spending money. So I show up in Boston with $50 in my pocket, but big dreams in my head. And so that was kind of my journey. I went to MIT, I went to Harvard, and then started a bunch of companies. And that's kind of that's been my journey.
Is Boston where you fell in love with basketball? Because obviously the Boston Celtics, there's a lot of historical teams during that time. Was that where you're like, yo, I love basketball. This is something, that means a lot to me. Did you have dreams in your head? When did you first start thinking about, investing in a team and, becoming a governor of an NBA team?
Yeah, so Evan, my kind of love affair with basketball started much later. I was a single dad. I had 3 kids. And I was trying to find ways to spend more time with my then 12-year-old daughter. And so I foolishly volunteered to coach her basketball team and understand that I'd never touched a basketball in my life. I didn't know anything. And so the guy who ran the program, a guy called John Pay, who played both Stanford football and then he was a professional football player and he also played basketball. Mm-hmm. So he just said, okay, you're a dad, I'll let you do this. And so I show up at this gym in Redwood City with all these courts, and it's near my house. And there's all these ex-Division I dads, 7 feet tall, on the other courts. And then there's me. And so I literally didn't know what a draft was. And what they had done is they had drafted all the good players and they'd given me all the girls that nobody else wanted. And so I'm standing there with the basketball in my hand. And I'm thinking, I did this to get close to my daughter, Anjali. Right. And I'm going to make a fool of myself and it's going to backfire. And instead of, being a positive, so I didn't know what to do. So I told them that, hey, girls, today we're just going to run. And so I made them run up and down the court for an hour. And then I said, I got to figure this out. And so I went back and I'm kind of a math nerd. So I created a math equation for the game. Uh-huh. And the next practice, I taught them the math equation. And, they kind of bought into it, even though they were only 12 years old. And then I ended up winning every single game and taking the team to the national championship. And I fell in love with the game. And then a few years later, my friend and neighbor, Joe Laker, had a deal to buy the Warriors, and he asked me to join him. Our kids went to school together. He literally lives walking distance from my house. Mm-hmm. And he knew that it was well known in the community that I loved basketball. And so that was, now the story with my daughter is chronicled in Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath.
David and Goliath.
Yeah, but it's the greatest show on earth, guys. Like I grew up a cricket fan. I grew up playing soccer, but I love, you guys are gods. This is a game for the gods. And there's no other sport like it.
So do you remember the math equation that you taught the team?
Yeah, so basically the deal was just win the turnover battle. And, and at that level, if you had, and I defined a turnover as anytime you have the ball when they should have it. So it could be an interception, it could be a charge, or it could be just a deny when you were inbounding the ball. And so I would do like a full court press all the time. Yeah. And I would have, I still don't understand why people guard the inbounders. I would have somebody double team the ball handler.
Well, great point.
Yeah,
great
and
point.
instead of standing behind, it's like on a football field, it's so hard to get a pass off, right? Yeah. And so what I would do is have, kind of double team the ball handler and then front the player. And so literally there were times when they couldn't even inbound the ball and we just get the ball right under the basket and they do a layup. And they started calling the mercy rule on yes. Because they said you scored 25 points in a row and you got to stop. And there was a game where the coach of the other team was so mad that he asked to meet me in the parking lot after the game. So what I did is my best friend is a guy called Roger, and he's won like 3 Super Bowls with the Niners. So I did go to the parking lot, but I was smart enough to take Roger Craig with me.
Mr. Craig, yeah, that's
a man. Okay. I thought you had a math equation for that too.
No, the math equation was, I did. It's called Roger Craig.
No, but I did read that in the book, and obviously Malcolm Gladwell was one of my favorite artists. I just bought his new book. It's on the World War II, The Longest Day in World War II, I believe. It's a national seller. So I haven't got to it, but I just picked it up last week. But interesting enough, you talk about the trap. The court is smaller when you're younger, but it's this thing with Draymond. No, I shouldn't say Draymond. I'm going to use Rajon Rondo. But Rajon Rondo, it was always play soft on him and back up off him because, you double someone else because he was supposed to be a non-threat. But what we learned was that he could see the floor easier if you didn't put ball pressure on him. Yeah. So that kind of changed my perception of should you guard the inbounds guys. Because if I'm a passer, it's much easier to get a pass off with nobody defending me. I made a game-winning shot against Atlanta, in Atlanta, and what happened was Harrison Barnes was wide open for the lob, but the guy was in my vision, and I couldn't quite see him, and I missed the lob to HB. I hit Steph. They double-teamed Steph off the inbounder, and it left me open for a shot. But a lot goes into that. But let's go back to, we always talk about, a lot of the players actually talk about, how do you put yourself in position to actually own a team? And take me back to when did you start acquiring your wealth, or how did you build your wealth to have even not just the opportunity because you knew Joe and then the networking you've done and the people you work with in the venture capital space, but how did you build that wealth to be, when they called you and say, hey, do you want to be in on this? You obviously have to have the capital. So walk us through that journey.
Yeah, so I've kind of lived the American dream, Andre, and so I'm very grateful for that. I always wanted to work for myself. Like I'm basically unemployable, so I have to start my own company because nobody would hire me. So that's what I've done. I had a great education. I went to the best schools, and I studied hard. And so the big idea that I had was I was a hardware engineer, and the way that software worked, it was never on time, never on budget. And so I came up with this notion: why not do software like hardware is done? And so if you look at your computer, or you take the top off a chip, you'll see that the problem to be solved is broken into pieces. And then there's a backplane or a bus, and everything plugs into it. And then it communicates over that bus. So I came up with this idea of a software bus. And the first place I applied it was Wall Street. And so I used it to basically digitize and automate Wall Street. And, so that was kind of my big idea. And that turns out to be quite a powerful idea. Even today, it's like the underpinnings it's the nervous system now for every company in the world. It's the underpinnings for Web 1.0, Web 2.0. And my superpower is that I'm always able to get people like 10 times smarter than me to come join me. And so I was able to surround myself with really smart people. And I just came up with these crazy ideas, and they executed on those ideas. And so I built, so my kind of success to the extent you want to call it success was in the tech world. I'm really a tech guy, and I'm always thinking ahead about what the future might look like. And so this became the source of the wealth that I was able to use to buy basketball teams. And I've always been a big believer that even when I think of a sports team, I don't think of it just as a team. I think of it as a social network that if you can capture it and expand it and engage it, then the value of it is huge. And then the data that you get with it is invaluable. And, 20 years ago, the biggest and most valuable in the companies in the world, their assets were in the ground. Now the assets are in the cloud, in the sky. And so, I believe when we bought the Warriors that it was a steal, like 450 million. And of course, I said it's going to 10x. And I was wrong. It's more than 10x in value.
Right.
So
I know. So after you're with the Warriors, you stayed around for like only a few years, and you went on to buy the Sacramento Kings. How is that different? What were different experiences from buying the Warriors as opposed to buying the Kings? And what was your biggest thing?
Yeah, it was a labor of love. Joe was the chairman, I was the vice chairman, and Peter was his co-chairman. It was a great group of partners. We had been losing, we got booed, and then all of a sudden we started winning, And so the fun part of the journey was starting. And I got approached by the commissioner, David Stern, and also the folks in the mayor in Sacramento. There was a deal to move the Kings to Seattle. And they approached me and said, hey, why don't you just buy the team and save it? And it should stay in Sacramento.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was highly publicized battle. And my initial reaction was, no, I love the Warriors, I love the Bay Area. This is kind of the team that my kids cheer for, and this is my team, and these are all my friends, and this is where I live. I had never even been to Sleep Train Arena. I'd never been there. So, but then I thought about it, and I came to California without a penny in my pocket. Everything I owe, I owe to the great state of California. And without the team, the city would be decimated. So somewhere along the line, I thought, I think this is something I should do. It's meant to be. I had all the success in the state. I need to do this back for the state. And part of the deal was that I had to give a personal guarantee that we would have a new arena built in a very short time frame. And if we didn't, the NBA could actually take the team back from me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I jumped in, and we did all that. Joe and Peter were very supportive. Peter said, "Hey, it's not that bad. I fly from LA to games, and so going from the Bay Area to Sacramento, that's like a 20-minute. I don't drive. I just take a plane, so it's only a 20-minute hop." And so he was very supportive of that, and that's kind of how I ended up going there. And we've delivered on that promise. We've invested over $1 billion into the city.
Right.
There's an economic renaissance there.
Right.
Now, walk me through that. We've had one of our topics recently on the pod is public versus private funding on arenas, and then you got arena cities. Yeah. Walk us through the economic advantages to owning a team and the assets around a team, such as the city that you're in, what you build around the arena, and how those things, help the top line.
Yeah. So when I went into the city was on a fast decline. Mm-hmm. And the downtown, literally you could get mugged. There were a lot of homeless people there, and it was falling rapidly. So we did several things. The first thing is that in some ways, David Stern, he was a very wise man, and he realized that having this kind of a law was going to help me, because building anything in the state of California is very difficult.
Right.
You have all these CEQA and environmental rules, and so the state literally wrote a law just for us, and it's called SB Senate Bill 743. And with that, we could fast track the development. So with that law in place, we then said with the city, let's partner on this because we're going to create lots of jobs and we're going to create lots of economic activity in the city. And we got a loan, which was basically a market rate loan as part of the investment in the downtown. So we basically invested over $1 billion, a combination of the arena and the downtown, and it's been an economic bonanza for the city. It's created thousands of jobs. It's created billions in economic activity. Sacramento has become the fastest growing city in the state. It's the #1 destination now for one-way U-Haul trucks. So if you rent a U-Haul one-way, so there's people moving into the city. There might be people moving out of San Francisco, but a lot of them are moving to Sacramento.
Right.
And so we've actually delivered on that promise. And I think that, in the old days, people gathered around a communal fireplace. And then later on, you build these grand cathedrals. And so you go to the great European cities and you see these amazing cathedrals and you see a town square. So we don't build cathedrals anymore. So the vision I had was that, kind of the 21st century cathedral is the arena. That's where people gather.
I always say that.
Yeah.
I've been saying, sports is the new church.
It is.
Where people
That's where you go
gather.
To see people, to be seen, to network, to connect, to celebrate, to worship,
Yeah.
So,
and that's where you go.
So Vivek, you obviously when you took over the Sacramento Kings, they're valued at $534 million, and now they're roughly reported at $2 billion. What about your past business experiences do you think help translate to this level where you're able to, build and, make a profit off, becoming a team business owner?
Yeah, so
or a
I
team
think,
owner, I'm sorry.
yeah, so I think that, again, I saw it from my technology background. I saw it as more than a sports team. First of all, when you put an arena, then there's a lot of real estate value that gets created around it. And then what I saw it is a network. And so, all the people on the network, you can find ways to monetize that. The data is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
And the popularity of basketball is just going straight up. So when I pitched the NBA on the team, Evan, I had this vision. I called it NBA 3.0. And NBA 1.0 was kind of the start of basketball as a pastime. 2.0 was taking it to the Olympics and going more global. And 3.0 is actually making it the sport of the 21st century, the way kind of soccer is now. And so part of that, my mind was driven by technology and bringing people closer together. It was driven by just being global. And so we became the first team to ever play a game in my home country of India. And so it's become one of the fastest growing sports in India now. And that's a gigantic market.
Yes.
It's a huge, huge market.
Yep.
And then number three is, I've always been very vocal about the fact that it's a privilege and honor to own a team. But with that, also comes an expectation that you do the right thing. And so my third kind of vector has been that you use this platform for good and, really for social change, for social justice. And I've been doing that right from the get-go. I was the first person to speak out when the Donald Sterling incident happened. And I was very vocal about the fact that, we have to have zero tolerance for that kind of behavior. As you know, I was the first person to actually stand up and say, Black Lives Matter. I marched with HP, we, hand in hand, we marched together, for Black Lives Matter. So I think that's a big part of it is, we have to be able to do that. I think that, look, this is a global sport. It's growing in popularity. The content is absolutely invaluable. It's content that you're not going to time shift. You're going to watch it in real time. It's got a guaranteed community of people that are going to look at that content. And so the value is just going to keep going up. And I still believe that it's a fraction of what the value is going to be in the future.
Well, speaking of the future, obviously, you guys over the past few years have made a lot of noise. I remember being in Portland and, going in at Sacramento, especially during the Aaron's younger years and everything, and knowing how tough it was to play there. I thought the energy and what you built, the cathedral, quote unquote, but obviously you guys have been going through a 16-year drought. You have the right type of energy and, obviously, where and what's a big time move and play. How are you going to manage through that and, continue to, get over that hurdle and be able to make it to the playoffs and get back to the Mike Bibby, Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic days?
Yeah, so Evan, again, I think we've done well. We've pressured on the business side, on the social justice side. Yeah. But obviously, we haven't had the success that we would have liked and our fans deserve on the basketball side. And, some of it was we just made bad choices. Some of it was just what we inherited, and some of it was even luck. But I think that we're in a good place right now. I think we have a really, strong core of players. We think an amazing coach. Thank you, Andre, for your help when I talked to you about our coaching decision. Andre was, I called Andre up and got his advice. And so we think that we have a great coach and he's building a great coaching staff. We think that we have some great foundational players, folks like Sabonis and De'Aaron. And of course, the veteran people like HB. We're very excited about the young guys. We got guys like Davion Mitchell, and we've obviously made some trades and we've signed some free agents. And then the rookie we're very excited about.
Yep.
And so we think we're in a good place. We think that we're going to move this forward, and we have high expectations. As you know, our fan base is not just loud, but they're very passionate.
Yeah.
And I actually appreciate that. I think it's great.
Now, talk to me about what you've learned in basketball that your other business and tech ventures didn't teach you.
Yeah, so Andre, some things that are common, just it's a people-based business. That's true in tech. It's true in basketball, right?
Yes, sir.
That people make the difference. Mm-hmm. What's true in both places is that a lot of it is culture. I like to say that culture eats strategy for lunch, and so that's true in tech, and it's true obviously in basketball. And that's quite, that's why I desperately wanted you to join us, because it's you who will get that culture builder. So I think those are some common themes. I think the differences are that in a business, you own the business. In basketball, the city, the fans, the media, the community owns the team, and you're just a steward. And I said I'm just a steward of the team. And obviously I have to do a better job in some areas. And so that's different. I think that your ability to effect change is actually limited in basketball. You have much more ability to do that in a business. In a business, if your finances aren't good, you can go fix it. You can raise more money, or you can find ways to fix that. If your sales are not good, you can go look at your sales force and figure out how to change the incentives or change the pricing, or you have levers. Or if your products aren't good, then you can go talk to the engineers and you can do things. But I think in basketball, it's really the front office, the players, the decisions that have been made. So I think that it's different. A lot of you can run the world's largest business, and owning a team is a very different experience. And
Vivek, sometimes they say it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes.
Exactly.
So a lot of people scream. Yes. Obviously, I know you're probably an analytics guy, and I love analytics, and I think it breaks down a lot. But I think one thing about the NBA that shows is you go to numbers, push the clock, or whatever else. But if Steph Curry's around, with Kevin Durant, Andre Iguodala, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green,
but Evan, I'm with you on that.
Oh
yeah. So even though I'm very much a numbers guy, I've written books on big data. I talk to my, the guys in analytics, and I joke with them, and I say, that if you asked a data guy, what does the average human being look like? They would say, well, the average human being has, and pardon me if I sound obscene, but they would say the average human being has one breast and one testicle. So if you average a man and a woman, that's what you would get, right? And so it's useless to talk about data like that.
It's true.
Yeah, right? That's real.
Yeah. And you can say what you want, but when push comes to shove, Andre's gonna hit that corner three.
Yes. Right? Yes, of course. So, but back in 2013 and 2014 season, yourself and Michael Jordan became the first non-white governors, in the NBA. Now you have Joseph Ty from Brooklyn.
Josiah.
Josiah. What does that mean to you? Obviously, you spoke on earlier about changing the earth and impacting the world. Was that just one step for mankind in your mind, or was there a team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to use this platform for good. I was involved in creating the Social Justice Coalition, and I'm part of that. And I talked to some of the players, and they said, look, you guys donate and you're generous, and you do all of that, and that's great. But you guys have access to power. You can talk to the governor, you can talk to the president, you can talk to the attorney general, and you can effect change in ways that we want to get access to that. And so we took that input very seriously, and we formed the Social Justice Coalition. And we're trying to effect policy and laws so that we can have a more just society. So in my mind, it's a privilege, it's an honor to own a team, but with that also comes a responsibility.
Now, you made a few points that I've kind of, stored in my brain. And one of them is you had 2 books out of 3 that you wrote. It's three books in total, right? But one is The Power to Predict, and the other is The 2-Second Advantage. So, some of our listeners sometimes, they've been reaching out and saying, break things down even further. What's the process of being able to predict? I was just having this conversation with my barber, which is actually funny. And I was telling him, for me is, knowing how cycles work. They're saying we're going into a bear market right now. We are in a bear market, or there might be a recession coming. Or how do I predict first when we come out of it? Because 2 seconds is millions and billions and trillions of dollars, depending on, the scale that you have with your capital. So, kind of give me your thoughts on how do you stay ahead of the curve, and how do you use that data to, see things before someone else does, and being able to take advantage of it?
Yeah, so it turns out that everything ends up being a pattern recognition problem.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something in computer science called an if-then statement.
If-then statement. Got it.
And so basically, if this, then that. And so the universe is 14 billion years old. Our solar system is 4 billion years old. And our planet Earth is 4 billion years old. So about 500 million years after the planet was born, there were the first organisms. And they had a very simple if-then statement, which was, if this, then food,
Right.
And then, they became multi-cell organisms, and they kept evolving. And we have modern man about 100,000 years ago. And from that, we have now the society that we have. And it's really our ability to recognize these patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens to be the way our brain works as well. It's just a set of rules, and we recognize patterns. And so if you can find ways to connect the dots and recognize patterns, and so my software has done that for much of the world. And so, for example, the largest phone company in India had a problem where they were trying to figure out how to stop people from moving off their service. And because it's very easy to switch services there and keep the number and not have to, it's very seamless to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we found is that if there were 6 dropped calls, then there was a high likelihood that they would switch services.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we would do is, after the 6 drop call, we would say offer them some free minutes, so they're disincented from switching services. And there's another example I like to give, where the credit card companies in Europe were trying to solve the problem of credit card fraud.
Uh-huh.
And you don't want to be too strict, because then you're turning away good business. So you want to find. So we found a pattern that if you bought razor blades, champagne, and diapers, it was probably a stolen credit card. Now, you just find the pattern, and then later on you can try to explain it and say, well, why? And you say, well, razor blades, because you can pawn them off easily. Champagne, it's a big ticket item, you can pawn it off. Well, why diapers? Because the guy's trying to look like a dad, so you don't suspect it, So everything ends up being a pattern recognition problem.
Yeah.
And so if you can find those patterns, then, you can predict the future. And on the basketball court, you guys do this, you kind of know where, it's like Wayne Gretzky, he doesn't go to where the puck is, but he goes to where the puck is going to be.
Yes.
And you guys, as great basketball players, you see that one step ahead, because you're closing the loop and you're connecting those dots, and therefore you're predicting. So the power to predict, the power to have that 2-second advantage, where a little bit of the right information before is more valuable than all the information in the world after the fact. So there's no point in trying to fix something after it's too late. It could be power outages. We suffer from power outages in this country. Well, it turns out that there's data points that can predict that those outages are going to happen, so you can avert them. Or fraud, or hacks. And a lot of that can be prevented just by connecting the dots, looking at the data, and finding the pattern.
Well, I have a basketball if. So it was highly publicized that you had an idea to only have 4 guys on defense and 1 guy always on offense. Now, first question, was it overblown? Or if not, if it was something you were thinking about, kind of walk me through what your thinking was behind that.
Yeah, so Andre, my idea was not a new idea. What I saw is that, our starting lineup was doing well, and then we would lose the lead and so, I'm a believer just in talking and having ideas.
Right.
And so I said, hey guys, I noticed that the good teams, and back then it was the Spurs, they leak out. And, by leaking out, they get an easy bucket. So it wasn't like a 5-on-4 cherry picking. It was more of a leak out. Mm-hmm. And somehow, I got blasted in the press for saying that. But here's the idea that I did have that people have embraced, which is, I'm a huge soccer fan. And the Dutch in the 70s popularized a type of soccer known as total football, where everybody basically can do everything. Mm-hmm. And so many years ago, I coined this term that everyone uses now called positionless basketball. Mm-hmm. And where, you can switch, everybody can defend. Yep. And so I started using that term, and Calipari gives me credit for that. But I think that's taken hold, right? And, yes. and you're kind of the personification of that, the positionless. Yes. The name of your podcast says it all.
Yes.
And so I think, and then, back then I also said that, look, offense is going to rule, and it's going to be a lot of threes, because of, 35%, 40% chance at a 3 is higher value than a 50% chance at a 2. Mm-hmm. So the game is going to shift to more threes. But I never actually suggested cherry pick. Just in talking to my front office, I said, why aren't we leaking out like some of the other teams are doing?
I do have a point to that, and we call it the Danny Green rule. And Spurs were up by 6 with not much time left in 2014 finals. 2013 finals. They're up 6. LeBron comes off, misses a 3, and right where he's supposed to be, he leaked out. He's supposed to be at the elbow. Miami gets the offensive rebound, kicks it back to LeBron. LeBron makes the 3, and inbound, foul Kawhi, timeout, whatever. Kawhi missed both, I believe. He missed 1 or 2, so they were either up or down by 5 or 6. And Kawhi does what he does. That's what led to them coming down. LeBron shoots another 3, misses, and Ray Allen gets it and makes the 3 to send the game into overtime, because then they got to stop. Chris Bosh blocks Danny Green in the corner on the opposite end to force overtime. But the championship trophy was on the court and was there ready. But I guess it's all situational. So I do like the argument. But as you can see, with the if-then, I like, playing devil's advocate. But yeah, I am.
You don't do it all the time, right? So you can't.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's a game of, it's a game of runs. It's a game of momentum. And you do it once in a while, and you mix it up, right? So you don't have to, like when the other team calls a timeout because you're on a run. Mm-hmm. When you come out of the timeout, then you mix it up. Maybe you give them a trap, or you go into a zone, and you see the coaches doing all this nowadays. And the guys that have won championships are very, like you guys, you've done an amazing job with always making the adjustments. It's a game of adjustments, right? So.
Right. True. Yeah. And so also what I've been hearing from you, something that stood out, you said the rupees weren't convertible. Yeah. And it made it difficult for you to make that transition to the States and to get into college here. And then you also spoke on, 1.0, 2.0, going to 3.0. And that's kind of got me thinking, I've been into the deep diving into Web3 crypto blockchain space over the last couple of years. And just want to know your thoughts on Web3, how it alleviates us from having certain types of issues and converting, capital. Also listen to All In podcasts and, what happened with Russia and us, almost like not delisting, but kind of doing away with doing business with the Russian currency. But in turn, Russia was able to buy their currency back for cheap, and in turn, it raised the value of their currency, and people are still doing business with them. So it almost bit us in the behind. But your thoughts on Web3 and the crypto space, even though we're in kind of the crypto winter?
Yeah, so we are in the year 2000 right now. basically. So if you look at the way that the web progressed, the internet progressed, then it was tracking being in 1998. And so if you see the adoption of crypto, and then at the tech conference I said, but 2000 is coming, and that's when we had the crash. That's when we had the .com bust, and that's a healthy thing because it kind of clears the ground.
Yes.
But Web3 is for real. It's here to stay. Blockchain is very real. Crypto is real. As you said, it takes away the friction. It allows cross-border transactions, and it's all of this is for real. I think that it's people said that about the internet in 2000 when everything crashed.
Yes.
And now our life is pretty much ruled by the internet. And so if you just look at the numbers in terms of adoption and how many people use Bitcoin or all of that is for real. And there's many components to Web3, right? So crypto is one part of it. The technology, the fundamental blockchain technology, it allows you to solve problems that you couldn't solve before. And so it's a real technology that has a huge place in the future. And then the metaverse is for real. People have been playing online games,
right?
NBA 2K for years. And when people talk about this, I like to remind them that if you look at the evolution of human beings, so 100,000 years ago is when modern man came into existence, Homo sapiens. And Homo sapiens were not always at the top of the food chain. And for example, the Neanderthals were bigger than us. But there was one trait that we as human beings possess that nobody else has. And that's the ability to create fiction, believe fiction, and then to profit from fiction.
Wow.
And so, everything is fiction, right? So,
right.
Yeah, everything is made up.
Like this piece of paper is $10 and give me a shirt for that, right?
Yeah.
Money is fiction, government is fiction, religion is fiction. And I was arguing with my buddy Cuban about this. And I said, Mark, we're at this, all-star conference here. And so you convince people that you take this ball, you stuff it through a hoop, you get 2 points. And then a lot of people pay a lot of money to watch people do that.
Right.
That's fiction, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So when people mock the metaverse, I like to remind them that, hey, we as human beings, our ability to do that allowed us to organize and create society so that we were able to get to the top of the food chain. We were able to beat the Neanderthals. They were bigger and stronger than us. So the metaverse is real. Blockchain is real. Crypto is real. Web3 is real. And I think that there's a correction right now, but it's all going to happen.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Vivek, last but not least, we want you to school us, back a little sport that everybody loves to play in your home country. I know you grew up playing at cricket. We know the Cricket Premier League is picking up some traction. Are you going to get involved in there? Do you want to?
Big TV rights just got done there.
Yeah, a lot of big things.
Huge.
So are you going to get involved in that? Do you want to?
There's multiple ways to get involved, Evan. So, I just invest in a company which is kind of the top shot of cricket. And so I'm a huge sports fan. I love cricket. I joined Josh Harris to bid on Chelsea. We didn't.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm a huge soccer fan as well. But Indians, they love sports. They love to celebrate. They love to party, and they see basketball. Basketball is really catching on big in India as well. And so I'm going to keep looking at different opportunities, be it in the IPL, be it in the EPL, or be in La Liga, or there's an Indian sport called Kabaddi that you should check out sometime. And basically, it's 5 guys on each team, and you have to go cross a line and try to tag people, and it's completely physical. And so you try to grab the guy and hold him, and there's like a shot clock as to you're supposed to hold your breath, but now they have a shot clock. When I told Dr. O'Neill about this, he wanted to play when he found out that there were no rules. You could tackle anybody and you could do anything. I think he was ready to give up on basketball and just play kabaddi. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there in the sports world, and I'm going to, pursue many of them.
Oh, perfect.
Well, I see you go back a good amount. So I think for ET and myself, we like to travel and see new parts of the world, and I've yet to be able to get to India. So we'd love to join you, explore the land and really get to touch and feel the people. So from us too, really appreciate the time. Best of luck in the future with the organization, with all the endeavors. If you ever want to go to a Leeds United soccer game, I got you. It's on me. Make sure we get some good seats hooked up. And once again, thanks for your time. Appreciate you joining Point Forward.
Well, thank you, Andre. Thank you, Evan, and congratulations on your podcast. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.